Thanks so much for coming. We get started. I'm really excited that you guys are here today. So I thought I would do a little introduction. My name is Elizabeth Hanley, and I'm the chair of the Community Housing Board here on Shelter Island. So we're charged with trying to develop housing opportunities for islanders. So one of the things what we're going to be talking about today is an awesome grant that Shelter Island has received. And it is the +1 ADU grant through the state of New York. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background. So the state of New York identified $20 million.
200, but 20 is the first round that went out.
Thank you. Okay. I was like, math, my math isn't mathing. So they identified some money. So there were 10 of these grants that were given out statewide. So it was an application process that we had to go through. So we are one of 10 municipalities in the whole state. So I hope that makes you feel special, because we are special. The first thing that I would like to do is just kind of talk about the town. So this money is for the town of Shelter Island, but we applied with the CHB-ADU. And so the first thing I want to do is just to give some appreciation to Gwen O'Shea, who's joined us here today. She's the executive director of the CHB-ADU, for believing in our little town and for taking the time and the resources from her organization to help write the application for us that was ultimately successful. We had worked together on other to understand financing opportunities for other housing stuff that we were looking at the island. So it was really significant that especially for a town, and just, you know, God bless, but we hadn't gotten very far in housing in the last 20 years. So for them to take the chance on us, we're really deeply appreciative of that. And I got a call from Gwen on Christmas Eve letting us know that we were one of the 10 towns that got it. So the clock has started ticking, which is why we're having this information session. So there are going to be 16 grants given. If we end up going to the max, there's about $2 million that is available for homeowners to create ADUs on your property. One of the reasons that we thought that this would be a good fit for this community is because we are such a small and tight-knit community, it allows homeowners to be part of the process in solving the problem. And also the other thing that really struck me was, you know, we do have such a high concentration of seniors on fixed incomes that I think that there's a great opportunity in allowing those seniors not only to be part of the solution, but also in getting some additional income to help them age in place. So I want to acknowledge that I don't think this is going to solve all the issues that we have on the island around housing, but my hope is if it can help solve a few, then that's a few less that we have to solve. So without further ado, this is Gwen O'Shea from the CHB-ADU, and she is going to be talking us through the specifics of this program. So thank you so much.
I'm so happy to see so many people come out on a Saturday afternoon. Thank you all for taking the time to come out and talk with us today. And I want to give some shout outs and love back to Liz. You are very, very lucky and fortunate to have such an amazing community resident championing the needs of the community to ensure that there are housing for all. And so it's been my pleasure to work with her and of course have the support of the supervisor in putting this proposal forward, because as was mentioned, it was extremely competitive. And we're just thrilled to be able to support the town in chipping away at some of the housing aspirations that you are all looking to create. And part of the reason I'm here today, do we have the same issue as we did?
Oh, it didn't click?
For the contract? Sorry. Sorry to bring it back up. So I'll keep talking as we make our way through it. One of the reasons that I'm here is because I run an organization, as Liz said, called Community Development Corporation of Long Island. We've been serving the region since 1969, and our focus is on home and community development, making sure that individuals and communities are financially stable and sustainable. And at the foundation of that is home. And we recognize that home looks different for all people, right? Whether that's a rental property, whether that's a multifamily rental, whether it's a single family home. So we do all we can to create and maintain great home opportunity for individuals throughout Long Island. And we do a lot. I won't go into all of the details, but we do a lot from a home ownership perspective in terms of rehab, providing grants, providing loans to homeowners to both purchase, maintain, and rehab as necessary so individuals can thrive and stay from a financial security perspective in their home. So when this opportunity presented itself, we thought it was a great opportunity to work with the, I'll just do this, let's see. We thought it was a great opportunity to work with the town because accessory dwelling units are really a great option for additional housing options. They're a great fit for rural and suburban communities because they maintain and protect the facade and the look and the feel of the community. They provide additional financial support to a homeowner by having a rental property, and they expand the number of housing units that are available in that community. All of which, as Liz noted, is I think what the town is looking to accomplish as we move forward. So this program is officially underway. Like Liz said, the state recognizes the housing challenge that all communities across the state are having. And so their hope is to get these dollars out pretty quickly and see the completion of new units make their way through the pipeline in a pretty fast way. So the program started officially March 20th. Ideally, the state would like to see the program completed by March 20th, 2025. And so, as we mentioned, to kick off the program, it's a $2 million program. The state did allocate $200 million in the last budget cycle. So there are additional dollars that will go out to communities that are successful in completing their first award and interested in accessing additional dollars. So we hope that we'll move this
to the next one. Gonna try it?
Oh. So back to ADUs. This is what they look like in terms of keeping the community facade and really maintaining that character and the quality and the look and feel to suburban and rural communities. So the +1 ADU program, high level, I won't get into all the specifics today, but just to give some general parameters so you can start to think about if it makes sense for you, if it works for you. The program does allow for up to $125,000 for the either construction of a new accessory dwelling unit or for bringing an existing accessory dwelling unit up to code. It's also really important to underscore that this program will provide resources for either of those, but all within the code that is set forth by the town. So there will not be really any allowances for variances. It's what can we do with homes and parcels and units to move them as quickly as possible through the construction, completion, and ideally occupancy perspective. So the $125,000 does include project management fees, construction fees, admin fees for all aspects that are pertaining to the completion of the accessory dwelling unit. You will be working with us, CHB-ADU, on that development as we look to move forward these ADUs within the town itself. Again, can be either a new or existing property that needs to be brought up to code. In addition to the $125,000 award amount, there are requirements as it pertains to the income of the household. So again, it's our belief that the state has made this investment in accessory dwelling units because they recognize how much the cost of living has gone up across communities, in particular in a community like the town of Shelter Island, and that for many homeowners, it's in particular homeowners that have been aging in place for a number of years as those costs have gone up, that making any changes on the property are extremely cost prohibitive, but also that by making changes, by including an accessory dwelling unit, it could bring additional income into the household as well. So the focus is on households that are making or earning up to 100% of the area median income. So just Starting with the family size of one, that's roughly $102,000 a year. That amount increases as the household size increases. So looking at a family size of 4, you'd be eligible for the program if the income coming into the household was at or below $146,000 per year.
And just this slideshow will be available on the Community Housing Board website.
Thank you. Yeah, I apologize
Probably
in
early
advance.
next week.
I use
but
a lot of
it's up there.
lingo and
Yeah.
acronyms, so I'm sorry if being
Yeah.
involved in our space, sometimes we just use acronyms more so than we should. So I'll try to make sure I do less of that in this presentation.
You're good.
So as I mentioned, the $125,000 is all in for construction, for permits and administration, and part of the administration ties to a compliance period. So because this program is a forgivable grant, there are requirements as it pertains to participating in the program. The state's expectation is that the program compliance period is 10 years, which means that the homeowner will have a rental in that additional unit for the 10-year period that is required within the compliance period. It's also required that that occupancy, that new unit that is created, will be a permanent residency for someone, so they cannot be used for Airbnbs, for weekend rentals. It has to be a year-long residency. The program does allow for once the accessory dwelling unit is built, that if the homeowner themselves decides to live in the accessory dwelling unit and rent the main property, that is allowable for the program. It is also allowable that you have a family member that might use that additional unit that has been created as well, recognizing the importance of multi-generational households. There does not have to be rent charged for that unit that has been built, but it does have to be a year-long residency. Again, the permanent main residence of the person that would be occupying that unit. So going through the application, project selection, design, permitting, construction, lots of different pieces here. We're in the process of creating the actual application. The state will have to review that. We have a meeting set with the state in mid-May, and we ideally hope to have an application online as of June. As I noted, the state is very anxious to see projects move forward and to have a pipeline of interested candidates. So we, as the recipient, are required after we receive an application to notify the applicant within 30 days. It's then hoped for that 30 days after that, things will start moving in terms of contractor being, determined, going through the process with the town to ensure that the work scope complies again with all the regulatory aspects of an accessory dwelling unit that would be built or brought up to code. So in addition to the income guidelines that I mentioned, I did note that ideally right now with this first round of funding, the state does hope that construction would be completed by March 2025. As we were discussing earlier with contractors, recognizing the difficulties, the challenges and delays that come with construction right now, cost of labor, shortages of materials oftentimes, potential, inclusion of a separate IA septic system, the requirement of the Department of Health reviewing that, the list goes on and on. We know timing may not meet this end goal, but we are certainly going to try really, really hard, because if we have greater interest than we have funds, we want to show the state that the community is very much interested in accessing additional resources. So we want to do our best to keep things moving there. As I noted, there are income limitations for the household. We're still working on getting feedback from the state about potential eligible real estate tax exemptions for the additional unit that would be added to that property. The state has put in priorities that are not requirements. So the last two here are priorities, but not requirements. They would like to see the accessory dwelling unit be made available to someone that's in more of the workforce housing, affordable rental space. It is not a requirement. So unless the town was to put something in place that required that, it could be made available at market rent. And the state, again, just looking at the diversity across the state, is looking for priorities around public transportation. I don't think that would be an area that we're going to put at the top of the list. Wanted to make sure it was disclosed, but it's not necessarily something that's going to, yeah. So just again, some general high-level information about construction, closeout, and compliance. There are two options as it pertains to undertaking the construction work for the accessory dwelling unit. CDCLI will be managing a list. We're hoping to have as many individuals, design experts as possible from the town of Shelter Island participating. But we will be maintaining a list of those that meet the requirements of the state in terms of insurance, in terms of other certifications that are required, and of course, any other permitting or regulatory requirements that the town may have for contractors. Or the homeowner can, so we'll have this list. We can either manage it on behalf of the homeowner, or the homeowner can manage and pick from the list the contractor that they'd like to work with themselves. We will be doing check-ins to make sure that we're staying on schedule, that we're staying on budget, and again, that we're meeting all of the requirements that were laid out in the original work scope and that the permit allowed for. One thing to note related to contractors and contractor use, you cannot be working, if your family member has a contracting company, they cannot be the contractor participating on the accessory dwelling unit construction for you. If you are a contractor and you meet the income guidelines, you cannot be working on and managing the construction requirements for your own property. We are required to do a closeout and make sure again that once that accessory dwelling unit has been completed, that there's a certificate of occupancy, that everything that the town requires from an occupancy perspective and a permitting perspective has been met. And then you'll be working with us for the next 10 years. We are required to check in every year to see that there is a rental permit in place for that property. Again, can be a family member. You don't have to be charging rent, but it does have to be a year-long residency, and there has to be a lease in place for that person. We would also be managing prior to closeout. There is a restrictive covenant placed on the property and a lien placed on the property for the 10-year compliance period. If for some reason the homeowner decides to sell the home within that 10-year compliance period, there'd be a prorated take back of the sale of the house from the $125,000 over that 10-year period of time. Once the 10-year window of time is completed, the lien and the covenant restricted is taken off the property. And I know that there is some conversation from the town's perspective about how long that unit would need to be in use. I think town code requires it in perpetuity. No.
Okay. No. Yeah. So I just wanted to just jump in. I know you're not totally done, but I wanted to just kind of talk a little bit about eligibility, which is I think a lot on many of our minds. Right. So Gwen really outlined kind of the process and the income eligibility. And one of the things that we know with building on Shelter Island is, we have a lot of things that we have to think about, right? We have to think about water. We need to think about IA system. We've got a lot of things that we need to make sure that we're considering. So the Community Housing Board has put together a little pamphlet. You'll find them on the back table, kind of talking about what the current building code says about where you can build an ADU, what the requirements are, so that if you find that you do meet the income requirements, now you can take a look at your property to see if hey, is this a good choice for the property that I have? So again, the code is outlined in that pamphlet. The other thing that I would just like to kind of bring to your attention, kind of to talk about the the compliance of kind of the 10-year occupancy, is additionally, if you find yourself with something that's maybe close or you have questions, first of all, Reed is here from the building department. if you have questions about your specific property, he might be able to answer them today. And the other thing that I would bring to your attention, if you find yourself with a property that is not in the nearshore overlay that you think is pretty close, that the Community Housing Board also has a tool at their disposal, which is called the Community Housing License. That, like I said, not for folks in the nearshore overlay. That is a possibility to explore to make potentially your ADU viable. So that is something that we are happy to explore with you. If you were to satisfy your zoning requirements through the use of that community housing license, one of the requirements from our point of view is that unit be affordable in perpetuity as long as it was occupied. So that kind of does, I do think that there will probably be some units that, like I said, the zoning requirements will be fulfilled that way, that will be affordable in perpetuity. So there's there's a couple different tools. So like I said, as you read that, if you find that you are not in the nearshore overlay and you're kind of close, please approach us at the Community Housing Board to see if you might be a good candidate for that community housing license.
What's the near shore overlay?
I'm so glad that you asked. It is, do you want to?
It's
That's why I invited him. I was like, oh God, don't make me explain. Yeah.
it sometimes seems arbitrary, but it's basically a zone that circles the island. And not surprisingly, it's near the shore. And basically you have to look at a map to see if you're on it, you are not.
You are not. Yeah.
I mean, off the top of your head, incredible.
Yeah.
But there is you can come in, and this is true of almost all the questions about your specific property, should probably just come in, we'll talk to you about it.
Yeah.
Because it does get very particular.
Yeah. Yeah.
The main issues from a zoning standpoint in terms of requirements are 75% of whatever the current required lot size is for your zone. So it's 80,000 square feet for AA and 40,000 square feet for all the others. So you have to either be 60,000 or 30,000 square feet to be eligible for an accessory apartment.
So my recommendation would be if you're interested and you meet the income requirements, that you come and speak to the building department or kind of get hooked up. Just to kind of make sure that your property meets it. And so, like I said, I would probably vet myself. If it was like for myself looking at this, I would be like, do I meet the income? And then, like I said, go find out if your property, if it would work there. Yeah,
Is the income your gross income or?
I believe it's your taxable income. Is it?
Well, that gets very wide.
No, I think it's, well, in our May conversation with the state, we
Mhm.
will make sure that is
Yeah.
confirmed.
Yeah.
And just one, there's 16 of these wonderful.
Yeah.
Calls available, so 16 of the wrong would be.
Well, here's our hope. Here's our hope is, so this is the first round of funding from the state. And if we find that there is a lot of interest from our community, and we have more applications than we have money available, we are, we would try to go back to the state for more.
Is there any way to know now what would set somebody in a better position, in terms of applying? I mean, is it?
Application in. That's
Just getting your
gonna be-
application in. So that's one of the reasons that we wanted to do. So our hope is that CCLIs, you're meeting with the state just to kind of get some clarifications on just some of these
Things
questions
like
that we're asking, right?
income
So
and
we get that in and
Whether
like,
it's gross or net, and then we have to get the application approved by them, which we're trying to streamline and get up as soon as possible. But then we're ballparking the 16, right?
Mhm.
Based on the maximum amount being 125,000, but
Right.
depending on.
Time that any applicant have, like if it's a race to the.
well, I mean, here's the thing. So this is one of the things that from the community housing board, this is one of the reasons why we want to do these pre-sessions. So that basically everybody is ready to go. So we will widely advertise once the applications are going to be up. But that's one of the reasons we wanted to be reaching out to the community so you can figure out does my zone work? Does this, so you can be kind of answering these questions. So by the time the applications open, which we're hoping for in
We'll
mid-June.
get a heads up before they.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But just so that you can kind of answer some of those questions before we get there.
When I've asked this question of Liz earlier,
Uh-huh.
you said you would be able to tell me.
Let's hope.
Will nonprofits qualify?
No, this is nonprofits that own single family residences.
Yes, we have, Presbyterian Church has a manse, a residence.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
On a lot, and there's a nice little spare lot next to it with no accessory building.
Okay.
And the question is, would we be able to put an ADU there?
And the nonprofit would rent the ADU.
You would manage it. Aren't you managing these properties?
No.
Oh, okay.
So it is up to
Okay,
the
there's another
homeowners.
group that might manage it. We would prefer to have an outside group manage.
Yeah,
it.
I don't think,
Some kind of housing, there is a housing.
I mean, we do that, we do that in
Yeah,
other, but
but
not
not part of this.
yeah, not part of
Yes,
this.
we would collect the rent and we would try and keep it, and it would be below market, I mean, it'd be below or at market.
We can certainly ask the state that the
Yeah.
current program guidelines are pretty silent on outside.
Yeah, I know, I was like,
any
I
other
didn't,
entity.
I looked at
It's a
the.
perfect location and it would be a great help.
Yeah,
Sure.
no, it's okay, yeah.
Secondly, will you allow prefab or modular?
We would love prefab and modular as long, our main focus is that it complies with town code. And that it can be done as close to the 125,000 as possible. We do, just as a reference, as a nonprofit organization ourselves, we have a CDFI, which is a community development financial institution, so we lend
Right,
and fill gaps in space in a very competitive way. Unlike some of our mainstream financial institutions, so we would look, if we find out that new construction here is roughly, 150,000, we do have loan products to meet that difference, and we want to make sure that it's financially viable for the household to take on that loan.
and one final question, are you gonna require zero carbon, like, solar, heat pumps? What are you going to do? to
It's a
make
good
this-
question. It's not required, but we certainly, as Liz mentioned, we're working with the town of Southampton as well. And obviously, there's a lot of conversation around sustainability. So we'd like to leverage as many products and additional aspects as possible, but it's not currently a requirement.
Can the
of the
town
funds.
add that to their code or?
Well, so here's the thing, so this is a product through this, so this is coming from the state. So all the requirements are kind of baked in with the state. So it would have to be a general code change, which is not kind of what we're up to.
And the state is not requiring sustainable under this? when they
Not,
give
not,
this
not under, it is not under this.
Okay, I got like a lot of questions. Or
Let's
some of
go.
you guys know me, some of you know where I live. I
Okay,
live right in the center of town,
Okay.
off of Baldwin. I've had an accessory dwelling building for years.
Okay.
That my mother-in-law lived in, and then we moved into it.
Okay.
And then it was falling apart, so I fixed it up. I had a
Okay.
permit, got it. If something happened, permit lapsed, trying to get a permit back
Uh-huh.
again. The town has done nothing but telling me no. Now, my question to you is, can I, even if I don't make the qualifications to get the grant, can I get the permit so I can finish the house and fix it up? Or is it just only the people that get the grant?
it's totally separate, so I would say that the permitting thing, we should have a discussion probably.
I mean, because you're basically letting people build a structure on
So this is,
zoning that's not, what it's supposed to be for, which I think that's a great
hold on,
idea.
actually, hold on. I just want to stop you right there. There are no zoning changes.
Right.
No, so I just want to be clear that this is just money, right? But there's no zoning changes whatsoever.
Right.
Not like zero.
I'm pointing to it for
Right,
you.
It would be like crystal clear, so.
But there is people with accessory buildings that,
Uh-huh.
that will fall in, can get the money and can get this up and going, so like,
Yeah. But
That
so
would be my
the,
question.
so the, whatever the building zoning is completely separate from this. I'd be happy to have a discussion with
That's
you
all.
about that, but.
And I just want to add to that list, so if somebody came to us with an existing accessory dwelling unit that did not meet town code, they couldn't get any.
no,
Yeah.
it's fine, it was the
Mhm.
whole, it's the whole septic system thing.
Okay, yeah,
That's-
but yeah, let's have a separate,
And that
yeah,
was what, I can answer this man's question about the energy. The state would love you to put in heat pumps, that's why I do heating and air conditioning for them.
Mhm.
So they would love for you to put in a heat pump. I tell you that if you do it, because I've done it in a lot of places, do not get the cheap, low SEER ones, get the good ones, get the ones with the DC motors in them. Because at low temperatures, they do work, the regular standard 15 SEER cheap ones at 35 degrees or 43 degrees, they don't work. So that much I can say. And the state does like that.
Alright.
And the state does like.
all right.
Yeah, I'm sort of following Peter's question. But if prefabricated, building, does that include like a prefabricated tiny home that you could have somebody else build and bring onto the island and put on?
Yeah, it's like I said, as long as it met current Shelter Island building codes, that would be
But
fine.
that's a little bit confusing to me. So if somebody had 30,000 square feet in a C zone, does that make that a formidable, they could put this accessory building in a.
That would probably, let's have a separate conversation with Reed. I don't know that off the top of my head.
He's got 50%.
75% of whatever the current buildable lot
There you
is. I believe 30,000 would be fine.
And so that means that you can have two permanent year-round residences on a 30,000 square foot property.
Yes, you would have two dwelling units.
Yes.
What's the homeowner penalty if they can't like have it filled year round?
But you
Like,
would
if
have
they
to, you'd have to pay back the loan.
Okay, so then there's no forgiveness on the loan.
Yeah, so
And that's
the,
the only penalty?
Well, one of the
but
requirements
so
for,
the requirement,
Like 5 years down the road, let's say someone has one and nobody's in it. What's
Yeah.
the penalty?
So when we check in with you every year.
Yeah,
You
so-
wouldn't go 5 years, you would go, you know, every year we'd say, let's see the lease for the person residing in the unit. If
Okay,
you
so it
said,
has to be a lease?
yes,
yeah.
So
Or,
even if it's a family member who's
Well-
not paying, there's a lease?
yes, to show that that's their permanent residency.
Yeah. yeah, it could be like 0 because it's,
Can I just speak next? If the reason there's no one there is because I've tried but failed, is there a penalty?
So you would work with us to show that you've done due diligence. We'd work with you in helping you advertise and build the unit. We can check into with the state to see at what point in time, if you all thought that was really gonna be a challenge, we'll see at what point in time that's triggered for a payback, but that there hasn't been
that would
any.
be an amazing.
Recognizing the need for housing, we didn't, I don't think the state thinks there would be a challenge filling the units.
So
Oh,
the repayment is only if you sort of gave up on it being a rental.
Correct, and I don't know that within the 10-year period, if the third year, you've been, we had to check, they have, again, silent on that.
Yeah,
thus
we do
far.
have a couple.
The McHugh for IA systems, which, you know, I've been on for like 3 years,
Uh-huh.
which is okay. But if the accessory dwelling would require an IA system put in, which if you're not on the queue, is gonna cost probably half of what the grant is. Does that application move you on the queue, or is there a special consideration for that?
No, it's a really good question, and we were talking about this earlier with
With
the
the
contractors,
contractors,
and we have a separate loan product for septic systems in Suffolk County that we started when the program started, and saw very quickly how the hopes and aspirations of getting them installed was not quite met. So it's a really good point, and I think what we're gonna have to do before we open the application is probably have a conversation with the county about that, and see if there's gonna be any way we could, and I don't want to be taken out, like fast track or what are the,
Expedite, yeah.
that those installations, or,
If
and then get paid
that
back.
said, if that happens, so these applications go through and they do need IA systems, and for the, you know, the people who have been on the queue for a long time, also say, now, we were like 10th from the top, now we're 20th from the top.
Well, here's the thing is, I think that, I mean-
for grants or for actually having an installation?
Well,
You mean you're on the
tap
queue for a
grant.
grant?
Oh, yeah.
40 minutes by the town.
yeah, that's a different, so we're talking about like installation, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to your point about the grant, because we do want, you know, Liz and I have talked a lot about leveraging as many resources as possible. We would want a homeowner to access those funds rather than use the 125 for the IA system. Because CDCLI is gonna be responsible for managing the payments to the contractor, so the homeowner is not having to worry about getting reimbursed, we're managing all of that. We might have a conversation with the county to see, to your point, we don't wanna jump over anyone that's been waiting, but at least if we got approval, knowing it was in the queue, perhaps we could front the installation
This seems to me that
costs.
it's a little squishy, you know, between the county and the state on that particular issue. But it's just something, you know.
Yeah,
No, it's a great,
Is the 125, is that a limitation on what the ADU can cost? Or can you go over with your own, like if
okay, so
you?
you could go over, that's a great question, so I mean, like, building for 125, I mean, like, it's a great start, it's a great start. So one of the things that, you know, we've really kind of talked about, especially for somebody doing like a fresh construction, that might not be enough. So one of the reasons, right? So one of the reasons that we did partner with CDCLI is they do offer some really competitive rates, loan projects that might be able to kind of fill in the difference. And one of the things that we're also looking at from the Community Housing Board perspective is looking at basically what, you know, we call funding stack, right? So like, is there another program that we could kind of help stack on top of that to get you to what you need to complete the project? So whether that's, you know, if it's like a part of a loan, or you put in part of your own money, or I get like a $30,000 from an accessibility, you know what I mean? Like, So basically what we want to do is,
some of your, if you happen to have.
Absolutely.
You can use them. I do want to underscore that it's, but if not for, whatever that statement is, that if you didn't have these funds, you wouldn't be able to do it, right? So if it's gonna cost 500,000 and you're paying the majority, it wouldn't be a priority funding, ADU.
Are people gonna have to show proof of funds so that you don't end up with like, spending the $125 on unfinished buildings that'll just sit there?
yeah, so they'll be managing the project.
Right, so
Yeah.
no cash is going to the homeowner, so we'll be managing
No,
all of
I'm
the.
saying, but if they, like, say they have a $350,000 idea,
Uh-huh.
they spend the 125 and then they don't have the money to complete it.
So the homeowner will be working with us on the work scope. So it's not as if the homeowner is gonna create their own work scope for the ADU and then move forward. So we'd be working to make sure that the work scope put forward is as standardized as possible, meets the needs of the town, and then looks at evaluating what the actual cost is. And if it is over the 125, where and how that difference can be
Yeah.
paid.
But are people gonna have to guarantee that they can finish the project so that, like, say someone gets the grant and then they can't finish it and then someone has missed out on the grant?
So just to explain the application process, that's part of the application
Yeah.
being approved. So it's a little bit different than like the septic system now where you get a grant and then you go ahead and install, and if there's an overcost, you have to pay. This is, the work scope has to be done to say, okay, this is able to
I
move
think it's tricky
forward.
because if you qualify financially for the grant, how are you gonna show that you can finish it with extra money?
Well, I mean, I think that here's the thing is it's like figuring, so here's, I mean, I think the important thing to know is this grant problem does not solve all problems. It will solve some problems. So there will probably be projects that are not appropriate for it.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
what this point is the application project is to identify what those projects are that this works for. So again, scoping it out, what we think the total product cost is, and identifying that we have all that funding identified or in hand. Those will be the projects.
So
that
there'll
we
be like
support.
a guarantee for extra funding for someone who.
Well, we would identify the scope of the project and make sure, like, are you getting 125 here? Do you have $20,000 set aside? Are you gonna do a loan for this? All that would have to be lined out before
you break ground.
Yes.
before anything starts. So if
And then
it's-
if you're approved and then that doesn't come to fruition, does
no,
someone else then get the grant?
well, you'd have to have it lined up before you can even start.
Okay.
Yeah, so it'd have to be all baked in. So, sorry, you were waiting.
Yeah, so I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, this does still have to meet all of the town's zoning,
Yeah, correct.
building, everything.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah, there's
great.
no
Okay.
squishiness there.
Second question is, you said it may be eligible for real estate exemption, but not definite. So if I have an accessory development unit, my real estate tax could technically go up. if
I
the
think that
property
we are
is
waiting
assessed at a
for-
higher level.
I mean, there's a certain portion of, from a income tax perspective that the state can potentially waive. From the property tax perspective, that's at the municipal level.
Yeah, so that would be something.
All right, third question, if the ADU, if the owner moves into the ADU and the main building, does that still need to be year round
Yes.
rental? Okay, so that cannot be turned into short-term rental.
Yeah, so there's no short-term rental.
Okay.
If you take the money, it's not for short-term. Yeah.
Okay.
No, let's assume 100 applications
Mhm.
to apply for this. Let's assume 50 of them are approved according to all the town specifications. How are you gonna pick?
So there's actually this is why we have identified somebody who does this professionally and not the community housing board to manage this process.
So it's gonna be on a rolling basis, right? So that means as soon as the application process opens, we're gonna be accepting applications and reviewing, right? Because there are some individuals that will be able to get paperwork in sooner, some, to Liz's point, some projects that we're gonna take a look at the code and see why they might have met the income, they don't meet the town code requirements, so it's not eligible. So we're gonna be going through it on a rolling basis for applications that come in to see as fast as we can get things moving is what we're gonna try to
What
do.
if you get 20 perfect applications? How are you gonna prioritize who gets?
That'll be a committee that which would be wonderful if that happens, that we end up with 20 applications at exactly the same time that can make its way through. We'll have a committee that looks at and reviews those.
I have another second
Oh, yeah,
question.
yeah, of course.
This AIU or whatever it's called system, I was told it's like $60,000. It's very expensive, not, forget about it, the grants, but if I was a homeowner, wanted to put that system into my property, the number was thrown out at me was $60,000. So,
you can get on the
The average in the past couple of years has been about 36,000.
Yeah.
And they've been as low as like 26,000 and then 57,000, depending on.
but outside of that, if the homeowner decides to do, can they choose a traditional type of septic system to put in for the ADU?
Well, here's the thing, it would have to meet Suffolk Health Code, so
Right.
it basically, it just has to meet the code, the Suffolk Health Code and the town code, so if you are in compliance with that.
Well, I was
Cool.
told if you do the ADU that's attached to an existing dwelling, and you can tap in to the existing septic system, that you don't have to get involved in that other type of system. It's only when you have a separate detached.
It has to do with, it has to do with,
That's precisely true. There are a bunch of.
Guys.
yeah, it's like bedroom count and stuff like that, but it's a good question, because there's lots of details. I also just wanted to, I mean, did you have a question? Okay. Yeah.
I had a quick question.
Mhm.
Who is going to check that the
Units.
even if they have a lease, that they're not using them for short-term rentals? Is that the?
That's part of the, that's part of,
Wait, is that the responsibility of the county or the town? Because we've had a big problem on Shelter Island in that there is really little checking after the fact about who actually rents out short-term versus long-term. So I'm wondering who is accountable there?
So the requirement of the program is that there is a annual lease signed. And that's really the, where the compliance ends in terms of oversight. We would be checking annually. We are not code enforcement, for a town. I don't know the exact steps that the town utilizes for code enforcement when it comes to rentals, but there would have to be the renewal permit and the lease annually. I mean, obviously, if it was disclosed that someone was using it for a short-term rental, they would be in breach of the contract and be potentially liable for a full recapture.
But that remains the town to check or somebody else to, a neighbor to call in on them or something.
That, I can't speak to the
yeah, we were doing a yearly, so the CDCLI is doing a yearly check, but the town isn't, the town would be responsible for doing their own thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you have a one-story home to begin with, are you able to put a second story on with a separate entrance?
Yeah, so you,
Would that,
so you could, so let's kind of talk about so different kinds of ways you could do it. You could use this money either to build something totally separate, right?
Yeah.
Or you could create an ADU within your structure. So maybe you want to, break off part of the house and make that its own thing.
Right.
Or, again, if you could add another story and that would be within Shelter Island building code, go for it. Like that works too, right? So there's a bunch of different ways to go at this. I'm sorry, you had your hand up and so patient. Yeah.
yeah, the question was already.
Okay.
Does it have to be a primary residence, the applicant?
Yes, it does. Yeah, it cannot be, it needs to be like where they're.
Yeah, hi Liz, thank you for all your hard work. It sounds like there are a lot of specifics per everyone's case.
Yes.
So would you say that what would you say is the best, if I have like, let's say 15 specific questions about my property, what are
Yes.
my next steps?
Great. I'm so glad you.
I call you at
asked.
home?
People call me. Answer. What you can do is, first of all, I would recommend that, like I said, we do have some time before these applications open. So if you are interested, making sure that you meet the income eligibility. Number one. Two, you want to make sure that your property makes the standard. So like we do have a brochure that's in the back that has some very some of the broad outlines of like where an ADU is permissible. If you look at that and you think, hey, I think it's still me, then what I would recommend that you do is talk to the building department to just make sure that you would be able to get through zoning if that would be something that you wanted to do. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, that's I like it.
Who will set, or will there be the town involved in setting what we can charge for rent?
So while the program does talk about they want to prioritize making stuff affordable, you could do it at market rate. as it is written, and again, if you did end up being able to fulfill the zoning requirements through getting a community housing special license, that would be marked as affordable, and that's a separate process that you're welcome to work through the community housing board. Yeah,
Sorry.
I love
So
this.
say you have a small house, you're gonna really try to stick with the 125, so you're just gonna put like 1 bedroom and a kitchenette in your basement that could be rented out. Do you still have to change the septic?
Again, it has to do with the bedroom
size.
count.
Okay, but if you fall under the limit of bedrooms.
No, so this program doesn't require
Then, yeah,
any
apply.
It
additional
doesn't require-
change or creating IAs. It's just making sure that the home complies with the town and county
So if
code.
if you're under the amount of bedrooms and you wanna add 1 more, and that's an accessory dwelling. in the
Yeah.
Right, let's say you have a 2-bedroom
Yeah.
and you add 1 more bedroom, you're good.
basement, You don't have to.
yeah,
Well, it would,
but, oh,
it would
Oh.
depend. There's certain
I'm
things-
sorry, then there's the town stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry, I only speak from the county. I'm sorry, go ahead.
There were certain things in the town code that trigger the requirement for an IA, and that includes adding 25% living area. 25% of whatever the existing living.
so it'd be case by case.
It's complicated.
It's
Possible.
Yeah, totally, yeah, it is
It
possible,
would.
yeah,
That's my question.
oh, okay, yeah.
Are all the short-term rentals that are not being, are they all lumped together like like summer rental, and if you would hope to have a B and B that you ran yourself, is that the same thing? Like, and all short-term rentals are lumped in the same grouping? Because I know for me, my dream was live in my little unbuilt ADU and do a legitimate and code, whatever, bed and breakfast.
Yeah, so I mean,
yeah,
that's something you could do, but not with this money.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they are all lumped together.
Yeah,
They are.
yeah, I was like, that's a dream you can dream, but not with this.
Too bad, okay.
Yeah. All right.
I was just thinking, I would say to the
Yeah.
question about if we did get 20 applications at one time, one of the things we would do is ask them to pay for more money. So they have said, there is a little bit of flexibility here. One of the things they want to see is the interest in the program. So, we would make that something that we take on, is saying, listen, we have 20 ready to go. Could we get an increase? Because it does say that in the program guidelines, there is a potential to increase, depending on the need of municipality.
I have one more question. If I don't get it in the first round because I can't get my ducks in a row by then, can I apply next time? Or
Yeah, if there's more
never?
cash,
If there's
yeah.
more cash?
Yeah. Yeah,
When you get the answer on the gross income versus adjusted gross income, will you get that?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And we'll also
absolutely.
make sure that we are in touch with Liz and sharing with all of you through her great.
And what's the website?
so I'm glad you asked. So the first thing is I want to make sure that you guys know that this actually presentation is actually on the town's website, on the community housing board right now. So all this information is available online. And then the CDCLI is putting together.
This should be live probably about 8 o'clock tonight, which is if you want to submit, you'll have a interest form, whether you're
Yeah.
interested from a homeowner perspective, from a contractor, or a special,
Yeah, and
expert
so-
design perspective. And we'll continuously update you. We'll be putting together frequently asked questions. That's a great question. One of the ones that will be on that
Yeah.
list.
So we would get on your email list? or-
Yeah, exactly. And so the other thing is the community housing board is committed to kind of just like getting this information out. So we'll be putting it out on social media channels. Just trying to like putting it up on our website and just kind of getting it out as much as we
I do
can.
have a question.
Yeah.
Well, you said this is a 10-year program. Can I sell your house for 10 years?
You
You
can
can.
sell your house, but
Yeah, you can. It'll just be prorated over that period of time. So let's just say that, you got $100,000. Just imagine it would be 10, if you sold at year 5, you'd have to take 50,000 out of the home sale to pay back the requirement period.
Wendy, one of the things the town's considering
Mhm.
making it permanent affordable. So it would be needed in the project.
You said before you can't be related to the contractor.
Correct.
Yeah.
It can be related to the renter, but just not to the
But you can't
contractor.
be related to subcontractors either, so no plumber, no.
I know it's scary. Listen, I hope that is the problem, right? That there's enough contractors and specialty workers to be able to be connected to all the applicants. That's currently how it's written. I mean, it's certainly something we can bring back to the state and ask. I mean, I think if there's a separation, but we'll bring it.
It's a hard place.
Yep.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
we're
that's,
very-
that's how it's written, but we have a meeting midway.
How do the contractors, how do you choose your contractors? Do they apply to you to be contractors?
So they would, our hope, our intention, because we do run a number of other rehab construction programs, is we do have a list of vetted contractors that we know meet all the requirements to our permits, work with the municipality, have the insurance, the liability requirements that the state requires. So we would look.
It would seem more cost effective if they fulfilled all that, if they are island people.
Yeah, so-
And we want to
yeah.
focus locally. We also have a 32% minority women business entrepreneurial requirement. So the more that we can meet and
If they're
exceed
not
that.
on your list, though, they need to.
Well,
apply.
so here's the thing, is just so you guys know, we did a session at 1 o'clock today where we blasted out to all the licensed contractors on the island. And so we actually had a contractor meeting before we even had that. That's the,
There's on the website for that. too.
yeah, and so that's the first thing we do. So one of the things is we are really committed to making sure that this money is for local people in every possible way. Right.
Contractors interested?
Yeah. Yeah, it was, I mean, my
great to
email's
have
been
people.
blowing up and we had a bunch of people at the session.
What about a homeowner who sometimes owns the house and at other times rents it out? And then would build an additional, small tiny house. Use that as their home and then can rent their house out year round.
That would work, yeah, so it just means so as long as both of them, and my understanding are the
Their primary
long-term,
residence.
their primary long-term residents for both the renter and the homeowner. Yeah,
What if you have a house and you already have a family member living in it?
okay,
Could you still do this?
Yeah, and then they could become the year-long tenant.
Okay, so but what if the homeowner's not on the property
hmm.
and they're renting it to a family
Oh,
member?
so you're saying
already
having two- so having
like an
two-
affordable house,
No, the homeowner
Yeah,
has
the
to be
homeowner has to be part of
residing.
it, yeah.
okay.
You said, there's an interest form. Is this your interest form? Or is that?
That is the
Yours.
town.
That's the
okay,
that's
so
the
it's
town.
separate.
Yes.
Yes, we have
It's
it.
not here now.
Yeah, so
Correct.
here's the thing is we will also for folks, will be, obviously,
Linking, yeah.
Gwen and I talk a lot.
Yeah.
So we'll be like sending that list just to make sure that everybody who's expressed interest in the town, like the bazillion emails that I got, that all those names get to Gwen, so that like when that information comes out, so we're coordinating.
So can you tell me a little bit more about CDC LI?
Oh, yeah.
What exactly you do and like, how do you guys get paid?
Sure. So we, as I mentioned in the earlier slide, we are a nonprofit organization that has been serving the island. We serve Suffolk, Nassau, Brooklyn, and Queens, and we've been doing so since 1969.
How many staff do you have?
We have 110 staff right now, and we're still growing in case anyone is interested. We cover areas like rental assistance. So we run a very large housing choice voucher program. We provide what's called a family self-sufficiency program, where we work with individuals who are financially constrained to get on a greater financial stable path by providing case management support, saving funds through our homeownership center. So we have a homeownership center that provides financial coaching, financial health and wellness training, along with training to become or coaching to become a homeowner, no matter where you are on the spectrum. We bring in and have relationships with all aspects of homeownership. So lenders, legal support, insurance brokers. We also provide down payment assistance because we have a community development financial institution. So we help individuals who are homeowners, might need down payment assistance, closing costs, might need a grant, might need a loan. We then work with individuals after they become a homeowner. So unfortunately, for some individuals that are dealing with foreclosure or foreclosure mitigation, we provide assistance there. We provide assistance around reverse mortgages and making sure that individuals have appropriate counseling and objective counseling around that, if that makes the most sense for them. We are HUD certified, so we're completely regulated, ensuring that we keep a level of objectivity. So we would never tell a homeowner, go to this bank or go to that bank, but share as much information as possible as we can there. We also have a pretty large home improvement and optimization program where we provide support. We have a weatherization program. We were talking about, climate change and sustainability work, and we do a lot of work there in single families, multifamilies, businesses. We also do home improvement loans and grants if someone needs rehab to their property, they need accessibility build out, we do that as well. Emergency restore programs for seniors that may have an issue with water, heat, doors, or anything that is impacting their health and safety. We have a pretty large housing development and planning department under which this program will fall. We have about 1,500 units of rental, multifamily rental with cross-section of developers across Long Island. That
You
we
would have like one or two people assigned to the Shelter Island folks or?
Yeah, so we're gonna have a cross-section of different team members recognizing, the complexity here, right? From
Yeah.
sort of the application process, ensuring we have a great online system for people to review, to submit documentation, making sure there aren't any glitches there. Then having individuals go out, talk with homeowners, review the documentation, as Liz said, like, get a sense, are you really eligible for this program? Evaluate, if you're gonna need additional support, how do we make sure you're still staying financially viable? So we don't want to overlend where it puts anyone in a financial, unstable position. And then we'll have our contract team or construction team that will be working closely with homeowners who choose us to oversee the property, as well as work with contractors to make sure they're staying in line with the work scope and that we're on time. And then our finance team will be doing quite a bit to make sure that we get those payments out to contractors, get reimbursed from the state on behalf of that. And then we'll have our compliance team work with homeowners once the closeout takes place to make sure that those units, are being rented on an annual basis and that households are in compliance with the state requirement.
Now you're making my head sweat.
I know. I guess what I'll just say is, that was one of the reasons that I've been in conversation and reached out to Gwen, is you can tell there's just such a breadth of experience and they have just such deep organizational knowledge that she's just been like a well of information. As we've thought about just various housing opportunities here on the island. And when this came up, I knew that there would be one of the reasons I was really interested in partnering here is because I knew that there would be like a deep professional knowledge in every particular area that was something that is just something that we wouldn't be able to offer as a small town. So like I knew that the application process would be really good, that there would be like great oversight over the construct, just in a way that a larger organization wouldn't be able, that would be able to provide, that we would be able to provide as a small town. The other thing is, she's been a personal resource for answering questions about housing, but the CDCLI has also already partnered with the town around IA systems and loans and stuff like that. So there's already an existing relationship here.
And I would just add full transparency in terms of payment. So the program, when you saw the 125,000, that does include an administrative fee. So we have a 10% administrative fee for managing the program. As you can tell from all the facets that are required, that does not cover it. So thankfully, we do a lot of fundraising and we have other resources that our board feels very strongly about supporting community development and housing development within our communities across Long Island. And so we use those resources to help compensate for grants like this.
I have a question. You mentioned that the rent could be market rate. So that's not affordable housing, right?
So this is a grant written by the state of New York. So while we're prioritizing affordable rentals, it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Does that have to be year round?
It does have to be year round.
But so is there a percentage that you're looking at hopefully to be affordable?
Well, I
or
think
you have no control over it?
Well, it's going to depend on what applications we get, right? So I'm not sure how your how we would be looking at it, but it's definitely one of the things that we'd be looking to maybe. And again, I don't want to speak for your selection board, but definitely that is a priority. So maybe if we had more than, if we had one person that was wanting to do it market rate and one person wanted to do affordable, maybe that's how we might make the decisions. Is my understanding.
It's in the mix then.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, I just wanted to circle back to the annual compliance because in the earlier session, I thought it was a little bit more clear. There is a process where every year the homeowner has to submit a signed lease to you to prove that it's a year-round rental.
Absolutely. And we will probably be on site annually as well to make sure that the unit is staying up to health and safety codes of the town from a rental perspective. Thank you.
Two things. Does the lien on the property go against your credit rating?
Does the lien on the property go against your credit rating? No.
Okay, the second thing is, I just want to say thank you. I mean, this is really, what you guys did in the community board here is really. You guys really went out of your way to get this for the island. You know, any community should be grateful and thank you for helping these guys out. I'm probably not gonna make this one, but this is really.
No, your kudos is.
This
well
is-
deserved.
I'm really glad, very nice. Not that
You're
I'm-
out here swinging, man, you know?
You guys did a great job. You guys did a great job on this.
Here's my question, be weird, I'm sure for somebody else. Let's say, because 10 years is a long time for
Yeah, it
an
is.
older person. So let's say someone applies for it, they get it, they build it, and then 5 years down the road, they're not able to live in their home anymore. And they end up living in assisted living or something like that. Is there gonna be a safety net for those people so that they aren't penalized to pay back the grant?
So, I mean, my understanding would be is if there was like that's a pretty special circumstance.
Yeah.
Right, so I think that it would be, you know, that you would work with the CDCLI, just to make sure, you know, you would work with them at that point to just kind of figure out what is fair.
Well, so I just wanna,
Oh, yeah,
we have limitations around
Yeah.
what is fair, right? So there are parameters from the state. In that instance, if the house is sold, as long as the addition, if the buyer, you know, maintains utilization of
What
that.
if it's inherited though? What if it's not sold and it just?
If it's
goes-
inherited, that individual would still be required to have
So
that
in an
rent,
inherited situation, you have to.
maintain that,
abide by-
Yeah.
yes.
yeah, well, I mean, if you want,
Entrusted.
Even if it's entrusted, it still has to meet the 10-year compliance period.
Yeah.
And again, if for whatever reason someone was saying they didn't want to do that, it would be prorated.
But what if
over
you're
the
looking
10
at the house and then they're the homeowner not residing on the property?
They're still alive, it's entrusted or something like that.
Yeah,
They're
so like
living
you
in a
inherit the
nursing
house, and you
home.
live in Florida and then
So
you're not property, you're not owner
inherit
occupied.
the house, then at the time that we come to do the compliance, we would find the property not in compliance. And then
And
the,
then you'd have to pay back the loan.
and then the individual would decide, do they want to move back from Florida or do they want to just pay back that one?
yes. But I mean, I guess I would say in that situation, if you weren't living there, you're probably renting both places, right? Or
So you
the
can
summer
rent-
rent.
No, no, no.
But I guess what I'm saying is if you did, you know what I mean, like, you wouldn't be in compliance, but you'd have two sources of income, so maybe you would be
You'd
able
be
to
able to
pay the
pay that.
loan, or like, you know, like, I don't know.
Hey, Liz.
Yeah.
The 16, the number 16 of the projects,
Uh-huh.
that's really the minimum. But if somebody's doing bringing in and playing up the code and it goes 50,000.
Yeah.
it's still not-
Yeah.
That's absolutely right, that's absolutely right, so that's,
Use the grant to bring an existing.
Yes, yes, yes.
It's one or the other.
Yeah.
It's one or the
Yeah.
other. So if you have a property that needs $25,000 to meet code, then.
Yeah, so we could potentially do more than, you know, if we had like, we're bringing up a couple up to code, then we could do. That's, the 16 number is based on just like everybody went for the max.
Right, we know lots of individuals have basement apartments that may not be to code, and so it probably wouldn't take 125,000 to bring it up, and you could use these funds to do that.
I just want to follow up on what I heard Jerry say, that
Okay.
the town is looking at making this a deed restriction.
If you guys don't mind, I would love to table that just because this is about this grant. I think that is a really important conversation, but probably not for this venue. Is that okay? Just because there's so many details for this. I absolutely agree. Like I said, I think it's an important consideration.
Do
Sure.
the renters have to be Shoreline residents or working beyond?
For the
Pardon?
renters?
Yeah.
No, because one of the allowances we talked about, it could be a family member. I mean, obviously they become a resident, right? Once they're living in that property and they're there for the year, but it doesn't have to be someone that is currently residing on Shelter
I
Island.
mean, like, how do you know if somebody is renting it to somebody from the city who's just only gonna use it in the summer?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you have lingering there is the possibility of not being in compliance, right? I'm not gonna speak to what risks people are willing to take, but the program guidelines say it has to be full
The
year.
primary. It has
Well,
to
it
be the
only
primary.
says full year. It
I'm
doesn't
saying
say-
primary.
At primary.
It could be a
Primary.
second- It could be
Well,
a
it's-
second residence if you sign a 1-year lease.
Well, this
It
is,
just has to be a 1-year
Well,
lease.
No, I'm
Well,
sorry, it has to be
the
each
primary-
year, it has to be when the lease gets renewed, it has to be the primary residence of that occupant.
Yeah.
They could
Yeah.
be there for 1 year and then move out, you could rent it to somebody new every year as long as it's their primary residence, or it could be the same person for all 10 years.
Okay, so you have the space, but it has no kitchen. So they're going to give you a CO if you, they'll help you put a kitchen into that space, has 2 bedrooms or something, and the town will give you a CO for that. Whole existing.
CO?
That,
If it meets the zoning.
Yeah,
if it meets
the
zoning, yeah.
requirements.
If it meets zoning, yeah,
And if it doesn't meet zoning requirements, then you go talk to community housing.
then you
board,
can come talk to me for a community housing special license.
okay.
Getting that in place and then being. able to
Yeah.
go talk.
There was a primary residence, 6 months in 1 day.
No, that's Florida.
I don't know what New York says off the top of my head. We'd have to, let me
That's
check
what
the
it
state
is.
of New York and get back to you.
Isn't it?
And that's here. I think it's US is pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
So they'd have to have a Shelter Island light driver's license or a Shelter Island post office, well, driver's license.
Voter registration.
Voter registration.
No.
Yeah. Can they get a ferry ticket? Can they get a local ferry? Yeah, right.
First item of applications I mentioned.
You get a resident. Just say, if you do have further if you do have further questions, you can go here. You can also go to the Community Housing Board website. My email is on there. Please reach out. It's elizabethhanley@shelterisland.gov. And we also have a bunch of members from the Housing Board, and we're here to expedite this process and answer your questions and get you the things that you need. I really appreciate you spending your Saturday afternoon with us. Thank you so much.
Contract, we actually have.
Yes, I don't know. Look at the signage. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great question. Thanks so much for coming out. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think there's really an appetite for it. You're great.